morning, community. It's Pastor Brett with today's daily Bible reading. We are reading from 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 9 through 13, in preparation for this coming weekend, where we'll be kicking off a brand new series, which is actually part 2 in the book of Mark. Part 1 was Jesus the King. Look at the kind of king that Jesus is. In part 2, we're looking at the King's cross. We're going to see Jesus' eyes turn to the cross. What did it mean? What was he preparing for? What should it mean to us as followers of Jesus? And so this passage from 1 Kings gives us a glimpse into God's glory and helps us, I think, kind of understand why the disciples and why so many others in Jesus's day would have struggled with this idea of God's king going to a cross. That paradox just didn't fit. Kings are meant for thrones. Kings are meant for glory. Kings are meant for, just honor. And the cross was a tool of death, a traitor's, something that a traitor deserved. How do those two ideas fit together? Well, we'll explore that this weekend, but let's look at today's passage because I think it helps us just kind of relate to and sink our teeth into the idea of God's glory. Let's read together. Beginning in verse 9. There he, Elijah, went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And he replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And the wind there was, and after the wind there was an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he put his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And then the voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" This reading from 1 Kings, you might be familiar with it. It's one that we've taught on even earlier this year. I think that the subtext here, the idea that is never referenced in the text but is one of those ideas that's present here, is how do we encounter the glory of God? And for Elijah, who was exhausted at this point in his own journey, he has faced battles with false prophets. He has run away from wicked rulers, and he's come out here to a place to find some retreat, right? To really just, he thought he was going to die. But he comes to the mouth of the cave, and God tells him, no, come stand up and stay, right? Stay put here, and my presence, my glory will pass by you. And then all of a sudden, we see Elijah, event after event, and the narrator tells us the presence that was not the presence of the Lord, right? The great wind or the earthquake or all these things, the Lord was not in them. Those weren't what we're putting on display God's glory. Where was God's glory? Where was God's presence to be encountered by Elijah? It was in that still voice, the small, quiet voice. And Elijah recognized he was in a holy moment, and he covered himself up and he came to have an encounter with the Lord. And God asked him, "Why are you here?" And they continue their dialogue. Where do you encounter God's glory? Sometimes we look for it. I'll speaking for myself. Sometimes I look for it in the big event, in the great worship service, in the great and moving message, in some kind of world-changing movement. I look for it as I climb up into a mountain or chase the sunset to the beach. We look for it in these grand and big places, these kind of epic views or epic moments. But notice where God's glory is right here. It's in the small voice. It's maybe in the unexpected place. As we look and continue our study in the life of Jesus this coming weekend, we're going to see God's glory revealed like this, in an unexpected place. But the kind of place that reminds us of how near God is, how intimate He is. He's in the whisper. He's in His presence with us in Jesus. One who had, Isaiah tells us that he had no appearance, he didn't have this special appearance that he stood out. He didn't have this unique beauty that he captured people's attention when he walked into the room. And yet when you had an encounter with Jesus, you knew that you'd been in the presence of God. You knew that you'd been in the presence of something that was life-changing. And so today, as you go out throughout your day, I want to ask you to try to have an encounter with the presence of God. Try to set your eyes on the glory of God. Not necessarily through those epic moments, through the wind and the storms and the mountaintops. Not even necessarily in the, this highly emotional worship song or this highly charged sermon. Meet Him in the quiet moment. Meet Him in the unexpected place. And see if in setting our eyes on Him then and there, we don't walk away changed. All right, community, have a great day. Can't wait to connect with you this weekend.